I run this as a weekly interview series that highlights black women and femmes who do dope shit in entertainment and culture while creating visibility, access, and empowerment for those who look like them. Read my Sesali Bowen interview here. Nicole Beharie's performances are heartfelt. You can tell in the small decisions, the subtleties in the characters she plays. She cares about each of them. When we talk on the phone, I mention that it feels like it's her season, with back-to-back major film releases in which she plays supporting roles. In Breaking, released in theaters on August 26th, Beharie plays Estel, a bank employee held hostage by a disgruntled veteran whose life has been interrupted after the Department of Veterans Affairs shorted him of his monthly disability checks. The film is based on the true story of Brian Brown-Easley and stars John Boyega, Selenis Leyva, and Michael K. Williams. On Friday, Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul premieres in theaters and on Peacock. Beharie plays one half of the husband-wife pastor duo positioned to lead the next megachurch after Lee Curtis Childs and Trinitie Childs, played by Sterling K. Brown and Regina Hall, respectively, struggle to bring their once-thriving congregation back to their church after a huge scandal. Beharie warmly corrects me and reminds me that seasonal is temporary. We're going to keep doing this. This is not seasonal, I know that's right. Most recently, she's been cast for the upcoming season of the morning show. That announcement was further confirmation Beharie is here to stay. The West Palm Beach, Florida-born actor, known for her roles in Miss Juneteenth, 42, Sleepy Hollow and more, has mastered the art of depicting the full richness of black womanhood on screen. She shows the multiplicities of us with a tender, yet focused approach. None of the characters she plays on screen are the same, yet there's this through line she's been able to conjure with seemingly small decisions that have big consequences. Whether it be her gaze, her delivery, where and when she pauses in her lines, she embodies characters that feel so familiar to us in real life, yet it feels like we're meeting them for the first time on screen. It's maybe a part of what I feel is my mission sometimes, Beharie said. I don't want to say giving voice to voiceless because I hate that saying, but people who folks ignore. Or you may be sharing space in a room with, but you don't necessarily give them all of your full attention. The people that people just walk by and don't realize how rich their story is, or why they are the way that they are in a world where celebrity and grand moments are surrounded by fanfare and commotion. She sees the special importance of what gets ignored, nuance. Those granular details that we often ignore, she finds a way to put them on a pedestal and turn our attention to them. The ordinary becomes special. Her performances know that even though we rarely admit it, that's what holds all of this together. Beharie discusses how she chooses her characters and projects, the importance of community and the beauty in the gray area. Beharie co-stars in the film Breaking, based on the true story of a veteran let down by the Department of Veterans Affairs. The characters and projects that you decide to take on are so rich and just full. Though you're a supporting actor in Breaking, the role you play is major. What drew you to this film? I read the script, and I really felt for the lead character, Brian. I felt for him being unheard. And then I actually have personal experience with a family member who served and who returned from service in the military and just wasn't quite the same. We have so many movies in Hollywood that glorify the fighting part, the grand gesture, war movies, but rarely are there films that are about what happens afterward and the ramifications of just one person's life. And not just the service. Brian was obviously disturbed because of the service, but then also the way that the nation or the VA or we as citizens choose to treat our veterans. And that was something that I had to actually grapple with, if I'm being completely honest, because I know when my family member came back and was different, I was scared. I don't think I had the level of compassion I should have had. I think that this film helps to fill in some of those gaps. And without being heavy-handed, have a little bit of a discussion about what our responsibility is and what we do to veterans. And then ultimately playing Estel, I just thought she was cool because it's almost like she was in the military. She was like, I got to get these people out, and this is all based on a true story. This is based on a real woman. And I saw some of the footage and photographs and heard a little bit of her real police report testimony. And she was just kind of a hero. Look, I had even talked to my director, like why does she not escape? She wanted to save her coworkers and save her peers and save the clients, and she also felt a connection with Brian. She's a hero, and I love that it's an ensemble. So it reminds me of Dog Day Afternoon. It's like everyone's in this one space. You're having to rely on one another to bring the high stakes to life. When I saw it, I was just so taken aback, and I dove immediately into Brian's story. Were you familiar with Brian's story before you read the script? I did the same thing you did after I read the script. I was like, let me look this up. What you're saying about why Estel didn't escape and that internal fight of knowing the system is clearly messed up while being held hostage. It's a point where she wants him to win and she just wants everyone to go home safe. In a lot of roles you choose, there is this underlying tension of your characters asking themselves, what is the right choice? How do we make the best decision right here, even though it's not going to look pretty regardless? Can you talk about some of that nuance and gray area in the characters you choose to play? What does that mean to you as an actor? This is going to sound so overly self-important or whatever, but I feel like that's life. We're always trying to figure out what is the choice. It's all about choices. And I think interesting drama specifically is like when you see people grappling with options. And that there are downsides and that there are major benefits from the choices. But that it will also hurt, that there are ramifications. What I don't see in life is black and white. So in thinking like a Juneteenth or even a Black Mirror, if you're talking about those things, you're right. And I don't even think that this is just with black women. I think that this is sometimes with female characters, period. They're just good people. They're just good or they're bad. Or she's funny, or she's sexy and beautiful, or is either slash or. And I don't really meet those people in real life. I think real life doesn't look like what has been depicted necessarily. And that there's a lot of gray area and a lot of unexpected things. And that's also what I love about Brian even in this piece. At first you're like, oh, someone who comes in, who's committing a violent act technically. But the level of need and the level of disrespect and disregard, it's like, what does it take to be heard in societies such as this or in places such as this where you're so low on the totem pole? I feel that's the nature of life and that ultimately I'm more interested in characters and also playing opposite characters that I am surprised by and that I get to learn things about. Because either way, he could have came in, bang, bang, bang. This is what happened in Atlanta. I feel like those were the movies that I watched growing up. But there's all these other layers for everybody, including Selenis, Leyva, including the police officers, the news anchor, everyone. I have to shout out Abby Damaris Corbin because this is her first feature and she managed to allow for it, even in a fairly big ensemble cast. It's John Boyega's vehicle and he kills it. He's so beautiful in this. But everyone else still gets a moment where you feel like I understand that character. And that's hard to do in little blips. How much time did you all have to shoot this? I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks. It ended up being maybe a little under a month. Sometimes, because of COVID, we had to stop and start. Not that I want shoots to always be intense, but if there's ever going to be a situation that was, you could use it in this film. The circumstances required that kind of intensity as well. You got me thinking about this gray area thing. And like, it's got some existential crises maybe. Even in the books that I love, though, the books and the films that I've always loved, music, I don't like anybody telling me this is the right thing to do. And I like to see people grapple. Isn't that why we show up to see movies and television and read books? It's like, just to remember, I'm not the only one going through this. Life wouldn't be worth living if things were cookie cutter though, right? Even though a little piece of me would like it to be perfect all the same. In the end, I think all the growth happens in those rough patches. I was actually looking at your interview with Brandy Evans, who I'm so obsessed with, and she mentioned something about pressure in the diamonds and things like that, like being a diamond and having to be tough. I was like, I see that and am happy to see her understand and give voice to that part of our experience too. And maybe that's a part of the level of nuance because I feel like sometimes people will ask us to be strong and it's like, yeah, but there's some vulnerability, there's some humor. There's a little bit of other things or a lot of bit of other things, but maybe that's all that's allowed right now in this moment. I think that this is sometimes with female characters, period, they're just good people. They're just good or they're bad. Or she's funny or she's sexy and beautiful or is either slash or. And I don't really meet those people in real life. I think real life doesn't look like what has been depicted necessarily. How much time did you get to spend with Michael K. Williams on the set of Breaking? We didn't actually get a lot of time, but there's a scene where we do a phone call. This man was so graceful and brought in so much light every time he came to set. He always had on the cleanest, sharpest ensemble and just smelled like he walked off of a runway in Milan or something, or like someplace in Morocco, like somebody had made perfumes specifically for his pheromones or something. Sometimes there were a lot of things going on set and he always grounded it and made it fun. He has been in every great television show, film. Everyone knows who he is and respects his crafts. And he showed up to do my off-camera lines on a day that he did not have to work. That's like, if that's your day off, that's like your boss being like, can you come in and help a coworker do their presentation? He also could have done it just over the phone or something, but he chose to show up, and that's so generous. I think that speaks volumes for the beautiful work that he's given us, but also to his character, his spirit, his generosity, and also to the kind of environment he creates on set and what he expects us to do. When you do that, then you're creating that exchange with everybody else to be generous and to have that expectation. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Other than that, we didn't have a lot of time, just like a kiki here and there. I was in the bank with the other two almost the whole time. But we only had a moment or two. I am just like everybody else, shocked and deeply saddened that I don't even know how to say it, that he's no longer with us. He was creating, he was dancing. It's just so many things coming from this beautiful person that I hope that we take some time to honor him in this process. I'm wondering how you take care of yourself. You mentioned therapy, you mentioned reading and music. But so much has happened, so much loss has happened. The world is just on fire. So I'm curious as to how do you tend to Nicole? Man, honestly, community is the thing. I didn't really know that until the pandemic. The first year, everyone would be like, yo, I was enjoying my time alone. I don't have to do anything. I'm dancing in the living room. I'm like, wow, it's really about my community. All the stuff didn't matter, my clothes and all this stuff. I think the older I get, I realize it really is about kinship and community. So that's a big part of taking the time to visit a friend, to send gifts. I will still handwrite a card and surprise somebody randomly in the mail, because now that everything's email and all that stuff or phone, you don't get anything but bills in the mail really, or anything. So it's nice to get a card or a letter. The things that people do, I still dance, but not as much because I can't really go to dance classes because I don't want to get COVID and give it to my cast and crew. So there's so many things: therapy, massage, energy work, Reiki, books, photography. There's so much at our disposal. Being in nature is big, and then when I get sick of nature, I'm like in New York on the street. But I really think pruning unhelpful friendships and stagnant energy is the key, and it is one of the hardest things to do. And it doesn't mean getting rid of everybody. But it means investing more time in the things that make you the happiest. And taking care of your body without beating it up. And sometimes we'll put ourselves on the back burner and be like, it'll be all right. And it doesn't always happen. And in the past, I've paid for not doing that. So I've gotten really good about making space for that, to the point where people are like, you're not coming, are you? I'm like, you already know. Listen, I used to be out in these streets. I'm in the bed these days. I want to talk a little bit about Honk for Jesus, too, because it is a lighter role. It's a story that makes you laugh, but also makes you think. It kind of felt like Boondocks in a way. What drew you to that role? Are other comedic roles on the horizon for you? I love all genres of this medium. I've done some fantasy, I've done some sci-fi, some surreal stuff, some romance. If I get an opportunity in a piece that makes sense to me with the right people, then yes, amen. And that's exactly what this was. Adama, she is an ahead-of-the-game thinker, brave. Adama is the writer and director, she's going to take over. I feel like Adama and Adan Igbo have a lot coming their way, and we are going to have to definitely keep our eyes out for what's coming next with them. But I read it and I was like, this reminds me of the Christopher Guest stuff of The Best in Show and those movies that we get to see that are like mockumentary vibes that I love. And there was something really beautiful about that. But then you have these incredible comedic actors and straight actors in Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. And when I say they are doing work that is hilarious and deep at the same time, stuff that will make you scream and be like, oh no, oh no. And even some of the stuff that we did, some of the stuff didn't make the cutting room floor because it's probably too problematic, but it was fun. There were some risky choices that we made in those rehearsals. I had a lot of fun and I was only there for a few days. When they called, I was like, absolutely. I'm a fan of everyone involved. I read it and was just like, this is the thing that again, it's not necessarily for the faint at heart, but that's not always why you go to the movies. And I think it's really brave to have this conversation because these are conversations that we have in our communities. I'm just really interested to see the audience reaction to this. Even as we were doing that, I was like, what are people going to say? And part of it too, I think we do veer away from making risky choices sometimes because of that. And when you go back to what now is status quo, it is funny. And one of the anchors said, it's all good. I remember growing up and that was so slang, or that was so off-center, that was so left. And you realize that things continue to move and shift. So what now seems risque is the things that are status quo now. The reason why people are saying things are dead because we're doing things that people have been doing since the 80s and not taking new risks and not making new material or using the same formula. And so when someone comes in and is like, hey, we're going to go head first or we're going to jump in with 2 feet with this particular topic and we know it's sensitive, I think that's the way to go. And it's interesting, if nothing else. I don't think anyone is harmed, hopefully. Beharie stars as Shakura Sumter in Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. What is the greatest career risk that you've taken that's paid off for you? I think actually this question is landing at a good moment because I want to take more risks. I feel like I've made a few risks, but I want to take more risks. That may be why I'm popping into this movie and doing this and that, meeting different creators. I think there's more risk to be had. I know you're writing now. I've been speaking with filmmakers who have had popular films in the last year or 2 or 3. And they're like 7 years, 5 years, 10 years.